The delivery room at Mercy General smelled of antiseptic and something darker. Iron, urgency, the faint electrical burn of machines pushed past their limits. Dr. Adrienne Whitmore had delivered over 2,000 babies in her 17-year career. She had never lost a mother, not once. The streak ended at 9:47 on a Thursday evening in late November under fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects, while 3 newborns screamed their first breaths and their mother stopped taking hers. Naomi Rothwell Hartwell lay motionless on the surgical table. 32 years old, dark skin gone ashen, lips the color of week-old bruises. Her fingers had been curled around something small when the hemorrhaging started. An ultrasound photo from her 20-week scan, 3 tiny shapes circled in purple marker, 3 hearts drawn with the careful precision of a woman who had spent 6 years as a paralegal before marriage, taught her that love required different documentation. The crash cart arrived. Nurses moved in choreographed desperation. Dr. Whitmore compressed, defibrillated, injected epinephrine directly into the failing vein. 11 minutes of refusal to accept what the monitors had already confirmed. 11 minutes while the surgical team delivered 3 babies by emergency cesarean, 2 girls, 1 boy. Margot came first, then Bridget, then Theodore. All 3 breathing, all 3 screaming, all 3 alive in a room where their mother was not. Dr. Whitmore stepped back from the table. She pulled off latex gloves that had gone slick with blood and fluids she would catalog later in paperwork that mattered to insurance companies and legal departments but meant nothing to the woman who would never hold the children she had carried for 8 months and 13 days. Time of death, Dr. Whitmore said, her voice a flat line of professional devastation. 9:47 in the evening. The clock on the wall ticked forward. The machines beeped. The babies cried. The humans in that room went quiet in the way people do when something irreversible settles into the air and makes a home there. In the hallway outside, Dominic Hartwell stood with his back against the wall. 35 years old, trim build maintained through twice-weekly sessions with a personal trainer his wife could not afford on her part-time legal aid salary. Hair the color of expensive whiskey, styled with product that cost $40 an ounce. He was not pacing. He was not praying. He was holding his phone in both hands, thumbs moving with the efficient rhythm of a man checking items off a list he had been composing for months. A nurse pushed through the double doors, her scrubs dark with fluids, her face wet. She looked at Dominic. She said his name. He did not look up. She said his name again, louder this time, the syllables cracking on the second word. He held up one finger. The universal gesture for wait, for not now, for whatever you need can pause while I finish this thought. The nurse said his name a third time. Mr. Hartwell, you need to come in now. He looked up. He locked his phone. He slid it into the pocket of charcoal slacks that had been pressed that morning by the dry cleaner 2 blocks from the house Naomi thought they owned together. He followed the nurse through the doors. He walked at a measured pace, not rushing, not dragging, the gait of a man entering a meeting he had prepared for extensively. The NICU team had already moved the triplets. 3 isolates. 3 tiny bodies wrapped in hospital blankets color-coded by some administrator's decision tree. Margot in pink, Bridget in yellow, Theodore in blue. They were stable, small but stable. Fighters, the neonatal nurse would say later when the word felt less like a knife. Dominic stood over the isolates. He looked at each baby in turn. He did not touch them. He did not lean closer. He looked at the nurse who had brought him and asked a question with the same inflection he might use to confirm a restaurant reservation. All 3 are healthy? The nurse nodded. Her throat worked. She swallowed something that might have been words or bile or both. Good, Dominic said. That's good. He did not ask about Naomi. Not yet. Not until Dr. Whitmore came to him directly, still in surgical scrubs, still carrying the weight of 11 minutes that changed nothing. She stood in front of him and used the words that doctors learn in training but never master. We did everything we could. The placental abruption was too severe, the bleeding was uncontrollable. I am so sorry. Dominic nodded. Once, twice, 3 times in slow succession, a metronome marking something that might have been grief to anyone watching from a distance. Was it the hemorrhage? He asked. Dr. Whitmore confirmed. Her hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together. The babies are okay, though, Dominic said. Not a question, a confirmation. The babies are stable. Okay. He exhaled through his nose, a controlled release of air that fogged slightly in the climate-controlled corridor. I need to make some calls. He turned. He walked back into the hallway. He pulled out his phone. He dialed. It took 3 seconds, not the fumbling scroll of a grief-stricken man searching through contacts. The number was ready, waiting. It's me, he said when the line connected. She's gone. His voice was steady, factual, the tone of a man reporting weather conditions. Come to the hospital, but wait until morning. I'll text you when. He hung up. He stood in the hallway for one long moment. Fluorescent lights hummed. The floor was cold tile. The smell was antiseptic and recycled air. He put his phone away. He straightened his collar with both hands, a gesture so habitual it looked like breathing. Then he walked back into the NICU. For the first time, he looked like a grieving husband. His shoulders curved inward. His face arranged itself into something that from certain angles could pass for devastation. Cecilia Rothwell received the call at 10:52 in the evening. She was in her kitchen in Ashford Falls, 4 hours north by highway, stirring milk into tea she would not drink. 61 years old, silver hair pulled back in a bun secured with the same tortoiseshell clip her daughter had given her 6 Christmases ago. Hands that had worked 2 jobs for 15 years after her husband died. Hands that knew calluses and detergent and the particular ache of holding things together through will alone. The phone rang. She saw the hospital's name on the screen. She knew before she answered. Mothers always know. The chaplain spoke gently. He used the words that chaplains practice. Complications during delivery. Did everything possible. So very sorry for your loss. The babies are healthy, all 3. Would you like us to... Cecilia sat down, not in a chair, on the floor. Right there in the corridor between the kitchen and the small living room where family photos hung in frames she dusted every Sunday. She sat with her back against the wall and she pressed both hands against her face and she made a sound that was not a word, not a scream, something older than language, something that comes from a place so deep inside a mother that most people never hear it. The sound of a heart breaking in real time in the present tense with witnesses. She did not remember ending the call. She did not remember standing. She remembered throwing a bag into the trunk of her 15-year-old sedan. She remembered the rain starting as she pulled onto the highway. She remembered 4 hours of darkness and wet asphalt and a prayer that repeated itself in the rhythm of windshield wipers. Please let the babies be okay. Please let the babies be okay, please. She arrived at Mercy General at 11:23 in the evening. The maternity ward smelled like every hospital. Industrial cleaner trying to mask the scent of bodies in crisis. A nurse met her at the station. Young woman, kind eyes, the expression of someone who had been waiting for her. Mrs. Rothwell, she said, I'm so sorry. The chaplain is available if you'd like to speak with... Cecilia's legs gave out. She did not faint. She simply stopped being able to hold herself upright. Gravity won. She sat on the cold tile floor in the corridor of the maternity ward and she pressed her hands against her face and she breathed in short gasps that hurt her ribs. A nurse knelt beside her. Another brought water in a paper cup. The chaplain appeared at the end of the hallway, moving toward her with practiced steps. Then Dominic emerged from a doorway. He walked toward Cecilia with his shoulders curved, his face arranged in the mask of shared grief. He knelt down. He put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Dot," he said. Her name in his mouth sounded wrong, too familiar, a theft of intimacy he had never earned. She fought so hard. The babies are healthy, all three of them. She would want us to focus on that. Cecilia looked up at him through tears, through rage, through a grief so enormous it filled the entire hallway and pressed against the walls. She looked at her son-in-law and something inside her shifted. Something she could not name. Not yet. But it was there. A whisper. A warning. An instinct honed by 61 years of watching men perform emotions they did not feel. She nodded. She let the nurse help her stand. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She asked to see her grandchildren. The NICU was warm, quiet. Machines beeped softly, rhythmic, the mechanical heartbeat of medical intervention keeping three tiny humans alive. Cecilia stood over Margot's isolette first. 5 pounds, 2 ounces, dark hair already just a wisp. Nose like Naomi's. Same slight upturn at the tip, same delicate bridge. Cecilia's hands shook so badly the nurse had to help her reach inside the clear plastic housing. She touched Margot's hand, just one finger. The baby's fingers curled around hers. Instinct, reflex, but it felt like a message, like Naomi reaching through her daughter to say, "I'm still here. I'm still here, Mom." Cecilia stood at each isolette. Margot, Bridget, Theodore. She memorized their faces, their tiny breaths, the way Bridget's eyelids fluttered in sleep, the way Theodore's mouth made a small O shape, surprised to be alive. She stayed until the nurses gently suggested she rest. She did not rest. She went to the waiting room. She sat in a plastic chair. She stared at the wall. At one point, she stood to get water from the fountain. The waiting room had a window that overlooked the parking garage. Through the glass, in the yellow glow of sodium lights, she saw Dominic. He was not alone. A woman stood beside him. Young, dark hair, red lipstick even at midnight. She was holding his hand. Her head was on his shoulder. He was not pushing her away. He was not crying. He was standing in a parking garage 4 hours after his wife died, holding another woman's hand, his face turned toward hers in a way that spoke of long familiarity, practiced comfort, the muscle memory of affection. Cecilia stood at the window. The paper cup of water crushed slowly in her fist. Water ran over her fingers, dripped onto the floor. She did not feel it. She watched until they separated, until the woman walked to her own car, until Dominic straightened his tie and walked back toward the hospital entrance. She watched and she did not move, and she began, in that moment, to plan. The funeral was held on a Thursday, 4 days after Naomi's death. 4 days that felt like 4 years, like 4 minutes. Like no time at all and all the time in the world compressed into a space too small to contain the enormity of a 32-year-old woman who would never age beyond this moment. First Presbyterian Church. 300 guests filled the pews. The casket was closed. Cecilia had insisted she could not bear the thought of 300 people looking at her daughter's fums, studying it, whispering about how natural she looked, as if death were something that could look natural. As if cosmetics and embalming could disguise the fact that Naomi was gone. The church smelled of flowers and candle wax and the faint cologne of too many people pressed into one space. Sunlight came through stained glass windows and threw colored shadows across the floor. Red, blue, gold, beautiful, indifferent. The light did not care that Naomi Rothwell Hartwell was dead at 32. The light fell where it always fell and would continue falling long after everyone in this room had joined her. Dominic stood at the podium, navy suit not black, silver tie, hair combed with precision, eyes red in a way that could have been crying or could have been careful application of menthol. He held a folded piece of paper in both hands. He unfolded it slowly. He looked out at the congregation. "Naomi was the light of my life," he said. His voice broke on the word light, just slightly, just enough. 300 people leaned forward. 300 hearts ached for him. She was the most generous, the most loving, the most selfless woman I have ever known. She gave everything to our family, everything to our children. She carried 3 lives inside her body, and she fought for them until her last breath. That is who Naomi was, a fighter, a mother, my best friend. He paused. He pressed his lips together. He looked down at the paper. When he looked up again, there were tears on his cheeks. Not many, just enough to catch the light. "I don't know how to do this without her," he said, "but I know she would want me to try. For Margot, for Bridget, for Theodore, for our family." He stepped down from the podium. The congregation applauded, softly at first, then building. Some people stood. A standing ovation for grief performed with the precision of a man who had rehearsed in front of a mirror. Cecilia sat in the front pew. She did not stand. She did not applaud. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, her back straight, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the altar. Beside her, Fletcher Rothwell, 35 years old, Naomi's older brother, built like a man who worked with his hands, which he did, construction sites in Portland, sat with his jaw clenched so tight the muscles jumped beneath the skin. "Something is wrong with that man," Fletch whispered. So quietly only Cecilia could hear. "I know," she whispered back. In the last pew, a woman signed the guest book with careful handwriting. Sloane Beaumont, close family friend. She wore black, a fitted dress, tasteful, expensive. Her lipstick was red, not muted, not subdued. Red, the color of stop signs and warning lights, and the kind of confidence that announces itself without apology. She sat in the back, and she did not cry. She watched Dominic deliver his eulogy with an expression that was difficult to read from a distance. Pride, maybe. Patience. Possession. The look of a woman watching an investment mature. After the service, guests gathered in the fellowship hall. Casseroles and cold cuts and too many desserts. The food people bring when they do not know what else to bring, when words fail and lasagna must suffice. Cecilia stood by the window and accepted condolences, hugs, the same words repeated in different voices. "She's in a better place. She's watching over those babies. You'll get through this. Time heals." Time does not heal, Cecilia knew. Time just gives you more space to carry the wound. She nodded. She thanked people. She drank coffee that tasted like cardboard and grief. Amy Castellano found her by the coffee table. 34 years old, freckles across her nose. Red hair pulled back in a braid, eyes swollen from crying for 3 days straight. She grabbed Cecilia's arm. "Dot," Amy said. Her voice was urgent, low. "I need to tell you something. Naomi called me about 8 weeks before delivery. She told me something strange." Cecilia set down her coffee cup. She turned to face Amy fully. She said if anything happened to her during the birth, I should check the closet in the nursery, behind the baby blankets. She said it twice, Dot. I laughed it off. She didn't laugh. "The nursery closet," Cecilia repeated. "Behind the baby blankets." She was specific. Cecilia filed this information away in the part of her mind that had been cataloging everything wrong since the parking garage. She nodded. She squeezed Amy's hand. "Thank you," she said. She did not rush home. She did not leave the reception early. She had learned something in 61 years. When you are being watched, you do not show your cards. And she was being watched. Dominic's mother, Evangeline Hartwell, stood across the room with her circle of friends. 67 years old, silver hair in a perfect bob, pearls always like armor, like a declaration of class she believed separated her from people who worked for their money instead of inheriting it. She had not spoken to Cecilia once since the hospital. Not once. She had not offered condolences. She had not asked about the babies. She stood with her friends and she watched Cecilia the way a cat watches a mouse. measuring, calculating. 3 days after the funeral, Cecilia noticed things, small things that accumulated into a picture she did not want to see but could not ignore. Dominic did not get up for nighttime feedings, not once. The nanny did everything. The nanny was a woman named Claire, 26 years old, blonde, efficient, hired within 72 hours of Naomi's death. Dominic had not asked Cecilia for input. He had not asked anyone. Within that same 72 hours, Dominic had also contacted Naomi's life insurance company. He had canceled Naomi's membership at the country club. He had removed her name from the joint checking account. He had donated her clothes, her shoes, her coats to Goodwill. Without asking Cecilia, without asking Fletch, without keeping a single item for the babies to have someday when they were old enough to wonder what their mother wore, what she smelled like, what textures she loved against her skin. Cecilia said nothing. She documented everything, dates, times, details. She wrote them in a small notebook she kept in her purse, the same brown leather purse Naomi had bought her for Mother's Day 2 years ago, monogrammed with her initials in gold thread that was starting to fade. On the 4th night after the funeral, Cecilia heard something on the baby monitor. She was in the guest room. The monitor was on the nightstand, white noise and static and the occasional rustle of a baby shifting in sleep. Then a voice, not Claire's voice, a different voice, younger, smoother, like honey poured over gravel. Soon this will all be ours, baby. Just a little more patience. Cecilia sat up in bed. She stared at the monitor. The green light pulsed. The voice stopped. Footsteps. A door closing. Then silence. The next morning, Cecilia found a sympathy card on the kitchen counter. It was not with the stacks of other cards that covered the dining room table in a landscape of condolence. This card was separate, placed casually beside the coffee maker as if it were a grocery list. White lilies on the front, handwritten inside. To my love, the hardest part is over. Now we begin. As Cecilia read it twice, she set it back down exactly where she found it. She poured coffee, she took a sip. She walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. The card was not hidden. That was what stopped her cold. They had not even bothered to hide it. That level of arrogance, that level of certainty that no one would notice, that no one would care, that the grieving grandmother was too old and too broken to pay attention. They were wrong. Cecilia took her coffee to the garage. She opened Naomi's car, a white Honda Accord, 7 years old, 140,000 miles of driving to doctor's appointments and grocery stores and the office where she worked part-time at Legal Aid helping women who could not afford to leave men who hurt them. Cecilia did not start the car. She just sat in the driver's seat. She adjusted the rearview mirror. She saw things her daughter had left behind. Sunglasses in the cup holder, a half-finished bottle of water, a prenatal vitamin stuck to the center console, a hair tie on the gear shift, the faint smell of vanilla lotion. Naomi had been right here, in this seat, alive, driving to appointments, singing along to songs on the radio. Resting her hand on her enormous belly, feeling 3 pairs of tiny feet kicking against her palm. She had been alive, and now she was not, and Cecilia sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She did not cry. She was too angry to cry. Anger was better than grief right now. Anger had direction. Grief just had weight. She sat in that car for 45 minutes. When she got out, her coffee was cold. She poured it down the garage drain. She walked back inside. She smiled at Claire. She kissed each baby on the forehead. She complimented Dominic on the breakfast he had not cooked. And that evening, when the house was quiet and Dominic was in his study with the door locked, Cecilia went to the nursery. She knelt before the closet. She moved the stacked baby blankets aside, soft blankets that smelled of baby powder and lavender, blankets Naomi had washed 3 times before the babies were born. because she read somewhere that newborn skin was sensitive and the detergent needed to be rinsed thoroughly. Behind the tower of blankets taped to the back wall, Cecilia found exactly what Amy had described. A manila envelope, sealed, Naomi's handwriting on the front, 2 words for Mom. Cecilia held the envelope against her chest. She closed her eyes. She took one breath, then another. She did not open it. Not here. Not in this house where the walls had ears and the man down the hall was texting the woman who signed funeral guest books with red lipstick. She tucked the envelope inside her jacket. She stood. She rearranged the blankets. She turned off the nursery light. She walked to her room. She packed her small overnight bag. She went downstairs. She found Dominic in the kitchen. "I think I should head home for a few days," she said. Her voice was steady, calm. "You're right that the babies need routine. I don't want to disrupt that." Dominic looked up from his phone. Relief flickered across his face, quick as a match strike, gone before most people would notice. "Of course, Dot. I understand. You need time to process. We all do." She left 20 minutes later. She drove to the parking lot of the public library on Maple Street. She parked under a streetlight. She locked the doors. She turned off the engine. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, sealed, heavy, the weight of her daughter's last words pressing against the faux leather upholstery. Cecilia opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 5 items organized with the precision of a woman who had spent 6 years as a paralegal before marriage. A woman who knew that in any fight, documentation was the difference between winning and losing. A handwritten letter. 8 pages front and back. Naomi's handwriting, neat, organized, the kind of penmanship taught in schools that no longer existed before typing replaced cursive. A USB drive, black, small, taped to an index card with a note in Naomi's hand. "Everything is on here. Dates, recordings, financial records. Give to Tad a copy of a phone bill, not from the family plan, a separate account, Dominic's name, hundreds of calls and text messages to one number, over and over, every day, sometimes 20 times a day. Screenshots printed on photo paper, text messages between Dominic and someone saved in his phone as S. Dating back 2 years, affectionate messages, planning messages, messages about the future, their future. Not the future that included Naomi and 3 babies. A handwritten note on a small piece of lined paper, folded once. "Mom, if you're reading this, I was right. Don't let him take my babies. The drive has everything." Cecilia read the note 3 times. She set it on her lap. She picked up the letter. She read it under the yellow glow of the streetlight. Naomi's voice was everywhere. In every sentence, in every carefully chosen word, not the voice of a paranoid woman, not the voice of a hormonal pregnant woman, the voice of a woman who had spent months assembling the truth. The letter began simply. "Mom, I know how this looks. A pregnant woman being paranoid. That is what Dominic says. That is what his mother says, but I am not paranoid. I found the texts. I saw the photos. He has been with her for 2 years, the whole time we were trying for these babies, the whole time I was in fertility clinics getting shots, getting hopes up, watching them crash. He was with her." Cecilia's hands shook. She pressed the paper flat against the steering wheel. "I found a hotel receipt 5 months into the pregnancy. It was in his coat pocket, a room at the Winslow Hotel downtown, charged to his personal card. The receipt showed rose petals and champagne, 2 glasses. I was home eating saltines because the morning sickness was so bad I could barely stand. And he was drinking champagne in a hotel room with another woman." The letter continued, page after page. Naomi described finding more evidence. A second phone hidden in Dominic's gym bag, credit card statements showing dinners and jewelry purchases she never received. A woman's earring in his car that did not belong to Naomi. She described hiring a private investigator, paying with cash from her own savings account. The investigator confirmed the affair: photographs, hotel records, restaurant receipts. The woman was Sloane Beaumont, 29 years old, marketing strategist. She had been seeing Dominic for at least 2 years, possibly 3. But the part of the letter that made Cecilia stop breathing was near the end. Mom, I am not writing this because I think I am going to die. I am writing this because Dominic has been asking about my life insurance policy. 3 times in 2 weeks. He asked how much it was worth. He asked when it would pay out. He asked if there were any exclusions for complications during childbirth. And last Thursday, he asked Dr. Whitmore if complications during triplet deliveries were common. He asked it like he was asking about the weather, like he was checking a box. Cecilia set the letter down. She stared through the windshield at the dark library building. Her breath fogged the glass. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. She picked the letter up again. I changed my will. I did it 3 weeks ago. Tad helped me. If something happens to me, the house goes to you. The savings account goes into a trust for the babies. Dominic gets nothing. I know that sounds harsh, but a man who asks about his pregnant wife's life insurance policy 3 times in 2 weeks does not deserve her money. He does not deserve her children. He does not deserve her memory. I hope you never read this letter. I hope I am being paranoid. I hope I come home with 3 healthy babies and burn this envelope and laugh about it someday. But if I don't, if the worst happens, then you have everything you need. Fight for them, Mom. Like you fought for me and Fletch after Dad died, like you always fight. You are the strongest person I know. You are the only person I trust. I love you. Now go be their grandmother. Your Nomi. Cecilia folded the letter along its creases. She pressed it against her chest. She closed her eyes. The parking lot was empty. The streetlight hummed. Somewhere far away a train horn sounded. Low, long, mournful. She did not cry. She was beyond crying now. She was in a place past tears. A place where grief transforms into something harder. Something with edges. Something with purpose. She looked at the envelope, at the USB drive, at the phone bill, at the screenshots. Her daughter had been a paralegal for 6 years before she married Dominic. She knew how to build a case. She knew how to organize evidence. She knew that in any fight, documentation was the difference between winning and losing. The envelope was color-coded, tabs along the side. A small table of contents written on a sticky note. Blue tab for financial records, red tab for text messages, green tab for the private investigator's report, yellow tab for the will. Even in crisis, even terrified, even carrying 3 babies inside her body while her husband lied to her face every single day, Naomi had been thorough. Precise, methodical, she had been preparing for war. Cecilia started the car. She drove to Thaddeus Huxley's house. It was after 10 at night. She did not call ahead. She parked in his driveway and knocked on his door and stood on his porch holding a manila envelope that contained the last will and testament of her daughter's courage. Tad opened the door in a cardigan and reading glasses. 45 years old, salt and pepper hair, calm eyes. He had been Naomi's godfather since the day she was born. He had taught her to ride a bike. He had hired her at his law firm for her first paralegal job. He had helped her change her will 3 weeks before she died. He looked at Cecilia. He looked at the envelope. He stepped aside without a word. They sat at his kitchen table until 2 in the morning. Tad read every page. He plugged in the USB drive. He reviewed the financial records, the phone logs, the photographs from the private investigator, the text messages. One message in particular made Tad set down his coffee cup and push his reading glasses onto his forehead. Dominic to Sloane, dated 4 months before delivery. Once the babies are born and everything settles, we will be free. She will sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. He was planning this, Tad said quietly, before she even delivered. He was planning to take everything. Cecilia nodded. She already knew. She had known since the parking garage, since the red lipstick, since the sympathy card on the kitchen counter. "What do we do?" she asked. Tad closed the laptop. He looked at Cecilia. His godchild was dead. His colleague was dead. A woman he had watched grow from a gap-toothed little girl into a brave, careful, meticulous woman was dead. And the man who was supposed to protect her was already counting her insurance money. "We do exactly what Naomi wanted us to do," he said. "We fight." 2 weeks after the funeral, Dominic asked Cecilia to leave. He did it over breakfast in a kitchen that still smelled faintly of the cinnamon rolls Naomi used to make on Sunday mornings, back when Sunday mornings existed in a world where she was alive. Scrambled eggs on white plates, toast cut diagonally. Orange juice in a glass pitcher that Naomi had bought at a farmer's market in Vermont 3 years ago, holding it up to the October sunlight to admire how the glass caught the changing leaves. "Dot," Dominic began, his voice calibrated to the exact frequency of gentle reasonableness. "I think it might be best if you head home. The babies need stability, a routine, and I've noticed that your presence has been, well, a bit disruptive." Cecilia set down her fork. She looked at him across the table. "Disruptive. Claire says you hover over the babies at night. You come into the nursery at odd hours. It's confusing the schedule." His hands were folded on the table, fingers laced together in a posture of manufactured patience. "I'm just thinking about what's best for them." "What is best for them is their grandmother." Dominic's smile tightened, just a fraction. Most people would not have noticed. Cecilia noticed. "I appreciate everything you've done, but this is my home. These are my children, and I need to establish a routine that works for all of us." "Of course," Cecilia said. The words tasted like copper. "You're right. I'll start packing." She did not mean a word of it, but she needed time. She needed Tad to file the paperwork. She needed to be strategic. Naomi had taught her that, or rather Naomi's letter had taught her that. Don't react. Document. Build your case. Then strike. She left that afternoon. She moved into a hotel 3 miles away. Close enough to drive back in minutes. Far enough to give Dominic the illusion of victory. Within days, Sloan moved in. Not into the main house. Into the guest house on the property. A small cottage behind the garden that Naomi had used as a home office, where she had organized her files, where she had printed those screenshots, where she had written that letter with her belly pressing against the desk and her babies kicking against her ribs and her husband's lies stacked in manila folders around her. Sloan transformed it. New curtains appeared in the windows, gauzy white fabric that caught the afternoon sun. New bedding. A vase of fresh flowers on the desk where Naomi's laptop had been. She told the nanny she was helping Dominic through a difficult time. She told the neighbors she was a close family friend providing support. She told everyone who would listen that those babies needed a mother figure. She did not mention that she had been sleeping with their father for 3 years. She did not mention that she had been the reason Naomi cried herself to sleep on nights when Dominic came home smelling like perfume that did not come from department store testers but from skin, from hours from hotel rooms with champagne and rose petals. The changes came fast. Within 3 weeks of Naomi's death, Sloan had taken over the nanny's schedule. She had redecorated the living room. She had removed Naomi's photographs from the hallway and the mantel and the side tables, family photos, wedding photos, the ultrasound image Naomi had framed and hung in the kitchen, 3 tiny shapes circled in purple marker. Sloan replaced them with neutral art, geometric prints, abstract shapes, nothing personal, nothing warm, nothing that said a family had lived here, that love had happened here, that a woman had died here. Amy called Cecilia one evening. Her voice was tight, controlled, barely holding back something that sounded like rage wrapped in disbelief. "Dot, you need to see this." "What, you?" Check Sloan's social media, her latest post. Cecilia opened her phone. She found the account. Public, of course it was public. Sloan wanted people to see. The post showed a pair of baby shoes, white, tiny, hand-stitched with small yellow daisies embroidered along the toes. Cecilia recognized them immediately. Her stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. Those were Naomi's shoes. Amy had been with Naomi when she bought them. 8 months pregnant, waddling through a boutique on Highland Avenue, holding them up with both hands. "These are the ones," Naomi had said. "These are perfect." She had bought 3 pairs, one for each baby, and now Sloan had photographed them, arranged them on a white marble countertop with professional lighting. The caption read, "Sometimes life gives you a second chance at family." Red heart emoji. Cecilia closed her phone. She sat on the hotel bed. She pressed her hands flat against her knees. She breathed in, out, like a woman counting down to detonation. The next morning, Tad called with worse news. He had spoken to the life insurance company. Dominic had already filed the claim, $750,000. The policy had been increased 6 months ago from $200,000 to $750,000. The increase required Naomi's signature. "The signature doesn't match," Tad said through the phone. "I've had a handwriting analyst compare it to known samples from Naomi's work documents, from the will she signed in my office. It's not her writing." "Forged," Cecilia said. "Not a question. Almost certainly. There's more. My forensic accountant has been reviewing the financial records from the USB drive. Dominic opened a separate LLC 18 months ago. Limited liability company registered in Delaware. He transferred $320,000 from the joint account into this LLC over the course of a year. Small increments, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, never enough to trigger an alert at the bank. Where did the money go?" "He bought a condominium, a 2-bedroom unit downtown. The title is in Sloan's name." Cecilia closed her eyes. Her daughter's money, Naomi's inheritance from her father, money saved from years of working 2 jobs, money meant to give his children security, money he died believing would protect them. Dominic had stolen it, transferred it, bought a love nest for his mistress with funds that belonged to a woman carrying triplets, a woman eating saltines in the dark while he drank champagne in a hotel room. Tad continued. He also made monthly payments of $4,000 to Sloan, listed as consulting fees, no documentation of what services she consulted on, and Naomi's inheritance from her father, $85,000. Dominic moved it into the LLC 6 months ago. There's no documentation showing Naomi's consent. Cecilia opened her eyes. She looked at herself in the hotel mirror. 61 years old, silver hair, lines around her eyes from years of laughter that felt like another lifetime, from years of loss that felt like yesterday. She looked tired. She was tired. But tired was not the same as beaten. "File everything," she said. "Whatever we need to file. Whatever court we need to go to, I want custody of those babies. And I want Dominic Hartwell to answer for every dollar he stole from my daughter." 3 days later, the triplets had their 1-month pediatrician appointment. Cecilia arrived early. She had arranged the visit through Dr. Whitmore's office. She had the legal authority as emergency contact, a detail Naomi had changed in her medical directives 3 weeks before delivery. Cecilia had all 3 babies in the triple stroller Naomi had ordered before she died. The shipping tag was still attached to the handle, a small paper receipt with Naomi's name and address. Proof of a purchase made by a woman who expected to push this stroller herself. She was checking in at the reception desk when the office door opened. Sloan walked in, diaper bag on one shoulder, bottles in hand, hair perfect, lipstick red. She walked to the counter and smiled at the receptionist with the practiced warmth of someone used to getting what she wanted. "I'm here for the Hartwell triplets. I'm their stepmother." The waiting room went quiet. 4 other mothers looked up from their phones. The receptionist looked at Cecilia, then at Sloane, then back at Cecilia. Cecilia did not raise her voice. She did not make a scene. She simply reached into the stroller and lifted Margot into her arms. The baby settled against her chest, warm, small, alive. "I have the appointment," Cecilia said to the receptionist, her words measured and clear. "These are my grandchildren. I am their emergency medical contact, and this woman is not their stepmother. She is not their family. She is not on any of their records." Sloane's smile faltered. Just for a second. Then she recovered, her voice taking on a note of concerned patience. "Dominic sent me. He wanted me to be here. Dominic is not here. I am." Cecilia turned her back to Sloane. She carried Margot to the examination room. The nurse followed with Bridget and Theodore. Sloane stood at the reception desk, alone, holding bottles that no one needed. After the appointment, Cecilia drove to the cemetery. She parked on the gravel path and walked across damp grass to Naomi's headstone. Modest gray granite, engraved with careful letters that cost more than Cecilia could afford, but less than Naomi deserved. Naomi Marie Rothwell Hartwell, beloved mother, daughter, friend. The words were true. They were also incomplete. They left out warrior. That was what her daughter had been. A warrior who built a fortress out of manila envelopes and USB drives and carefully dated photographs. A warrior who fought her battles in silence because the man she married had convinced her that speaking up meant she was crazy. Cecilia sat on the ground beside the stone. She did not care about the damp grass soaking through her pants. She arranged the flowers someone had left, lilies, always lilies. She picked a small weed growing near the base. She brushed dirt from the engraved letters with her thumb. "I found the envelope, Collie," she whispered. The old nickname felt strange in her mouth after weeks of speaking only to lawyers and judges and people who called her daughter Naomi, who never knew her as the gap-toothed girl who couldn't say her L's until she was 6. "I found everything. And I'm not going to stop." She stayed until the groundskeeper started his evening rounds. She stood. She brushed off her pants. She touched the top of the headstone, warm from the afternoon sun, and walked back to her car. The sun was setting, orange and pink and gold, the colors Naomi had loved, the colors she had painted the nursery, a sunset palette for 3 babies who would grow up in its warmth. Cecilia started the engine. She drove back to the hotel. She ordered room service. Chicken soup she ate every bite of because Naomi would have wanted her to eat, because grief was not an excuse to stop taking care of herself, because she had 3 babies depending on her and she needed her strength. She called Tad and told him to file the petition for grandparent custody in the morning. Then she sat on the edge of the hotel bed and opened her small notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote what had happened at the pediatrician's office. She wrote what Sloane had said, word for word. She wrote the time. She wrote the names of witnesses, 4 mothers in the waiting room, 1 receptionist, 1 nurse. She closed the notebook. She placed it on the nightstand beside Naomi's letter. 2 documents side by side. 1 written by her daughter, 1 written by herself, both building the same case, both fighting the same fight, both protecting the same 3 tiny lives. Dominic's lawyer was named Whitfield Bradford IV, a name that sounded like money inherited through generations of men who never questioned whether they deserved it. A name that had never known a public library parking lot at 10 o'clock at night or a hotel room with a minibar and a broken heart. Whitfield filed a restraining order against Cecilia. The petition claimed she was emotionally unstable, grief-stricken beyond reason, interfering with the father's parental rights and bonding with his newborn children. It described Cecilia as aggressive and irrational, and a disruptive influence on the household. Attached to the petition was a sworn statement from Evangeline Hartwell, Dominic's mother, the woman with the pearls and the perfect bob and the eyes that measured everything like a merchant appraising goods for resale value. Evangeline described Cecilia as hysterical with grief and incapable of respecting boundaries. She wrote that Cecilia had barged into the pediatrician's office uninvited and created a scene that frightened the babies and embarrassed the family. She wrote that Cecilia's behavior suggested an inability to distinguish between love and control, between support and interference. Tad read the petition in his office with the door closed. He read it twice. Then he set it down and poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher he kept on his desk, because coffee after 3 in the afternoon meant sleepless nights reviewing case law he should have memorized in law school, but never did because he believed in double-checking, in verifying, in making sure he never destroyed a life through carelessness. "They're trying to isolate you," he told Cecilia on the phone. "Standard tactic. Remove the grandmother. Control the narrative. Make you look unstable so when the custody question arises, you're already discredited. What do? We file a counter-petition. Grandparent visitation rights under state statute. But more importantly, I'm requesting a guardian ad litem for the triplets. An independent attorney appointed by the court to represent the children's interests. Not yours, not Dominic's. Theirs. On what grounds? On the grounds that Dominic introduced an unrelated woman into the household within weeks of his wife's death. That he hired that woman's college roommate as the nanny. That financial records show potential fraud. And that the deceased mother's own documents suggest she feared for her children's welfare." Cecilia was quiet for a long moment. She could hear traffic through the hotel window. Horns, engines. The ordinary sounds of a world that was still turning even though hers had stopped. Do it. Tad also filed a request for a court-ordered DNA test for all 3 children. He told Cecilia it was standard procedure in custody disputes where parentage was relevant. But there was something in his voice, a note she could not quite place. A frequency just beneath the words. "Why the DNA test?" she asked. "Because the affair timeline overlaps with the IVF treatments. And because in my experience, men who lie about money also lie about other things." The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 21 days of waiting, of documenting, of watching from a hotel room while Sloane rearranged her daughter's house, while Dominic hired photographers to take family portraits with a woman who was not the baby's mother, while Evangeline arrived every Sunday in her Mercedes and did not once ask Cecilia if she wanted to see her grandchildren. Cecilia used every one of those days. She met with Tad's forensic accountant, a woman named Veronica Thorne who wore bifocals and spoke in numbers the way poets speak in metaphors. Veronica laid out the financial timeline like a surgeon laying out instruments before an operation. The separate LLC, the transferred funds, the condo in Sloane's name, the monthly payments disguised as consulting fees, the forged signature on the insurance increase, the stolen inheritance. "He built a paper castle," Veronica said, her fingers tracing the flow of money across spreadsheets that would make a jury gasp if this ever went to trial. Impressive from the outside, but the foundation is fraud. Amy provided her own testimony. She described the phone call from Naomi about the nursery closet. She described the social media post with the baby shoes. She described 3 years of friendship with a woman who slowly, carefully went from vibrant to hollow, from confident to cautious, from speaking her mind to whispering apologies for a husband who was never satisfied, never present, never the man he pretended to be in public. "She changed," Amy told Tad during the deposition, her voice breaking on the second word, the last 2 years especially. "She stopped calling as much, stopped coming to book club, made excuses. She was always tired, always busy, always apologizing for Dominic. I didn't push. I should have pushed. I should have asked her directly. I didn't. I will live with that for the rest of my life." Fletch flew in from Portland. He moved into the hotel room next to Cecilia's. He brought a suitcase and a toolbox and a look in his eyes that worried everyone who loved him. I'm not going to do anything stupid, he told Cecilia. But I'm not leaving either. Not until this is done. The days before the hearing were heavy, slow, weighted with the kind of tension that sits in your chest and makes your heart beat 2 feet and too loud. Cecilia spent her mornings at the hotel gym, walking on the treadmill. Not running, just walking. Steady, forward, 1 foot after the other, the way you survive anything. In the evenings, she went through Naomi's pregnancy journal. Tad had retrieved it during a supervised visit to collect personal effects. It was a spiral-bound notebook with a lavender cover. Naomi had written in it every week, sometimes every day. The entries started hopeful. Week 8. I heard the heartbeats today, 3 of them. I cried in the car. Dominic smiled but didn't cry. Maybe men don't cry about heartbeats. Week 12. The nausea is brutal, but I don't care. 3 healthy babies growing inside me. I would be sick for 9 months straight if it meant they were safe. Week 16. We picked names today. Dominic wanted traditional names. I wanted something with meaning. We compromised. Margot after my grandmother. Bridget after his aunt. Theodore because I loved the name Teddy. Then the entries changed. Slowly at first, then unmistakably. Week 20. Dominic felt them kick today. He didn't cry. Maybe I was wrong about everything. Week 22. He didn't come to the ultrasound. His phone rang and he left. I heard him say baby to whoever was on the other end. He calls me Naomi. He calls her baby. Week 24. I found the earring in his car, under the passenger seat. Small, gold, not mine. I don't wear gold. Week 26. He came home smelling like perfume again. Not mine, not the kind you buy at the department store. The kind you buy for someone specific, someone you know, someone you study. Week 28. I hired the investigator. I used cash. He doesn't know. Week 30. The investigator confirmed it. Her name is Sloane Beaumont. She's 29. She's a marketing strategist. She's been with my husband for at least 2 years, possibly since before we started IVF. Possibly since the very beginning. Cecilia closed the journal. She pressed her hand flat against the lavender cover. She could feel the indentation of Naomi's pen strokes through the paper, the physical pressure of her daughter's hand writing these words. Processing this betrayal, alone in the dark while 3 babies grew inside her and her husband texted another woman good night. She read one more entry, week 32, the last entry written 6 days before delivery. I'm not staying because I'm weak. I'm staying because I have 3 children growing inside me and nowhere to go that he won't follow. But I'm getting ready. Every day I'm getting ready. Mom doesn't know yet. Nobody knows yet. But they will. When the time is right, they will. She was decorating their nursery with one hand and documenting her escape with the other, building cribs and building a legal case in the same breath, picking out baby blankets and hiding manila envelopes behind them. A woman at war on 2 fronts. And nobody knew because she fought her war in silence. Because Dominic had convinced her that speaking up meant she was losing her mind. Cecilia closed the journal. She placed it beside the letter, beside the notebook. 3 documents now. 3 women's histories stacked on a hotel nightstand. She turned off the lamp. She lay in the dark and listened to the hotel heating system hum. She thought about her daughter, about the woman Naomi had been before Dominic, loud, funny, the kind of person who talked to strangers in grocery store lines, who remembered everyone's birthday, who danced in the kitchen while cooking dinner. That woman had been methodically erased, replaced by someone quieter, someone careful. Someone who documented everything because she no longer trusted anyone to believe her. You were right, Collie, Cecilia whispered to the ceiling. You were right about all of it, and I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to tell me. The ceiling did not answer. The heater hummed. The hotel was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, someone was watching television. Low murmur of a news anchor, a commercial, canned laughter. Cecilia did not sleep, but she rested. She would need her strength for what came next. The courtroom was smaller than Cecilia expected. Room 412, Family Court, 3rd floor. The hallway smelled of floor polish and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the kind of lights that make everyone look tired, even the people who slept well. Cecilia did not sleep well. She wore a navy dress, simple. Naomi had picked it out for her 2 Christmases ago, back when Christmas still meant something other than the anniversary of the last time they spoke on the phone. The last time Cecilia heard her daughter's voice say, "I love you, Mom. I'll see you next week." She wore the brown leather purse with the monogram. Inside the purse was Naomi's letter, folded along its creases, always with her now. A talisman, a reminder, a promise. Dominic arrived with Whitfield. Dark suit, dark tie, hair perfect. He looked like a man who had slept 8 hours. He looked like a man who had no worries. He nodded at Cecilia across the aisle. Polite, controlled. The nod of a man performing decency for an audience. Evangeline sat behind Dominic. Pearls, perfect bob. She did not nod at Cecilia. She did not look at Cecilia. She looked straight ahead at the judge's bench like she was waiting for a performance to begin, a show she had paid good money to see and expected to enjoy. Whitfield spoke first. He painted a picture of a devoted father, a grieving husband, a man who had lost the love of his life and was now trying to raise 3 newborns alone. He described Cecilia as well-meaning but overbearing. He used the word overbearing 4 times. He used the word boundaries 6 times. He suggested that Cecilia's grief had made her unable to distinguish between love and control, between support and suffocation. He was good. Cecilia had to admit that. He was very good. He spoke with a kind of measured confidence that cost $500 an hour. His vowels were round. His consonants were crisp. His sentences had the rhythm of someone who had been taught to speak in private schools where teachers still believed that diction revealed character. Then Evangeline took the stand. She described Cecilia as a woman who never approved of Dominic and tried to control Naomi's choices throughout the marriage. She said Cecilia showed up at the hospital uninvited and refused to leave despite being asked repeatedly. She said Cecilia's behavior at the pediatrician's office was embarrassing and inappropriate. Every word was technically true. Every word was completely misleading. That was the genius of it. That was what money bought, not lies, distortion. The careful bending of truth until it pointed in the wrong direction. Tad waited. He let them finish. He let every word settle into the courtroom air like dust, like particles that would eventually be swept away but for now clouded everything. Then he stood. "Your Honor, I have evidence that Mr. Hartwell's characterization of the situation is not merely incomplete. It is deliberately misleading. He presented the financial records, the LLC, the transferred funds, the condo in Sloane's name, the forged insurance signature, the monthly payments, the stolen inheritance." Whitfield objected. Repeatedly, the judge overruled. Repeatedly, Tad presented the text messages from the USB drive. He read 3 of them into the record. The courtroom shifted. The energy changed. 300 invisible threads pulled tight between every person in that room. The one about being free once the babies were born. The one about Naomi signing whatever he put in front of her. And one more. A text from Sloane to Dominic, dated 2 days after the funeral. "When do I get to stop being the secret? I've waited long enough." Then the judge asked Cecilia to respond to Dominic's characterization. Cecilia stood. She looked at the judge. She looked at Dominic. She looked at Evangeline. She opened her mouth to speak and her voice cracked on the first word. She stopped. She breathed. She started again. "Your Honor, my daughter is dead. She left behind 3 babies who will never know her voice. They will never feel her hold them. They will never hear her sing the lullaby I sang to her." She paused. The courtroom was silent. Not a single throat cleared. Not a single paper rustled. The man who was supposed to protect her moved his girlfriend into their home before the funeral flowers wilted. He forged her signature to steal her life insurance. He took her inheritance. He erased her photographs from her own walls. And he is standing here today calling me overbearing. Her voice was steady now, low, clear. The voice of a woman who had stopped shaking because shaking was a luxury she could no longer afford. I am not here because I am overbearing. I am not here because I cannot let go. I am here because my daughter asked me to be. She left me a letter. She left me evidence. She left me a promise to keep, and I intend to keep it. The judge looked at Cecilia for a long moment. She looked at Dominic. She looked at the evidence binders Tad had submitted. She ordered the DNA test. She granted temporary supervised visitation for Cecilia pending the full hearing. She denied the restraining order. Dominic's jaw tightened, one muscle, barely visible. But Cecilia saw it. She saw it, and she did not look away. Outside the courthouse, Fletch was pacing. He had not been allowed inside. Character witnesses were sequestered. He was vibrating with the kind of energy that precedes either greatness or disaster. Dominic walked out the side entrance. Fletch saw him. He moved before Cecilia could stop him. "You killed my sister," Fletch said. He did not shout. His voice was low, controlled. The kind of control that is more frightening than any scream. Maybe not with your hands, but you broke her heart so completely that her body couldn't hold on. You stole her money. You stole her peace. You stole her trust. And now you're trying to steal her children. Dominic stopped. He looked at Fletch. He adjusted his cuffs, straightened his collar, the gestures of a man who believes he is above confrontation, above accountability, above the consequences that lesser men face for smaller crimes. Your sister was sick, Fletcher, mentally. The pregnancy made it worse. Everything I did was to protect my family. I'm sorry you can't see that. Fletch's hands trembled. Cecilia grabbed his arm. She squeezed hard. A mother's grip, the kind that says not here and not now, and I need you to hold on just a little longer. Fletch stepped back. He let out a breath. He looked at Dominic one more time. Naomi saw you. She saw through every lie, every excuse, every smile. She saw what you were, and she made sure the whole world would see it too. Dominic said nothing. He walked to his car. He opened the door. He sat behind the wheel. He did not start the engine for a long time. That night, Cecilia was alone in her hotel room. She sat on the bathroom floor, not by choice. Her legs simply gave out. She slid down the wall and sat on the cold tile and held Naomi's letter against her chest. I don't know if I can do this, Collie. The words came out in a whisper that nobody heard because nobody was there to hear them. I'm 61 years old. I'm fighting a man with money and lawyers and a mother who lies under oath. I don't know if I'm strong enough. The bathroom was small, white tile, a single overhead light, the kind of light that hides nothing. Cecilia saw her reflection in the mirror across from where she sat. She saw herself, but she also saw something else. Her eyes, the same eyes Naomi had, the same shade of brown, the same slight upturn at the outer corners. Her daughter's eyes looking back at her from inside her own face. Cecilia pressed her palm against the tile floor. She pushed herself up. She stood. She looked at her reflection straight on. She ran water over her face. She dried it with a hotel towel that smelled of industrial bleach. She walked to the nightstand and picked up the phone. She called the front desk. She asked for extra towels. She did not need extra towels. She needed to hear another human voice because the silence in that room sounded too much like the since after the doctor said, I'm sorry, we did everything we could. The front desk clerk was young, cheerful. He said he would send the towels right up. He asked if she needed anything else. She said no, thank you, good night. She hung up. She sat on the bed. She opened her notebook. She wrote the date. She wrote what happened at the hearing. She wrote what the judge said. She wrote what Dominic said. She wrote what Fletch said. Then she put on her coat and drove to a 24-hour diner on Route 9. She parked in front and walked in. The diner was warm, bright. It smelled like coffee and bacon in the fryer that never stopped. A waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile asked her what she wanted. "Apple pie and coffee," Cecilia said, "black." She sat in a booth by the window. She watched the waitress refill cups for truckers and night shift nurses and a young couple sharing pancakes at 2 in the morning. She ate the pie, every bite. Apple, cinnamon, buttery crust, Naomi's favorite. They used to split a slice every Sunday after church, back when Sundays meant something other than visiting a cemetery. She left a $40 tip on a $6 check. She drove back to the hotel with the windows down. The cold air bit her face, her eyes watered. She did not turn up the heat, not turn up. She let the cold wake her up. Let it remind her that she was still alive, still fighting, still here. 6 weeks had passed since the first hearing. The DNA results were due any day. Tad had prepared Cecilia for every possibility. He had explained the science, the timeline, the process. He had told her to be patient. Cecilia was not patient. She was many things. Stubborn, determined, exhausted, heartbroken, but patient was not one of them. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Cecilia was in her hotel room folding laundry she had washed in the hotel's guest machines. Small clothes, baby clothes. She had been buying outfits for the triplets during her supervised visits. She folded each tiny piece with care. 3 onesies, 3 pairs of socks, 3 hats, everything in threes. Her whole life was in threes now. Her phone rang. Tad's name on the screen. "Cecilia, I need you to sit down." She sat on the edge of the bed. A small sock fell from her lap to the floor, white with a yellow duck on the toe. The DNA results came back. Cecilia waited. She could hear Tad breathing. She could hear the clock ticking on his desk. She could hear everything and nothing at the same time. The triplets, Margot, Bridget, and Theodore. None of them are Dominic's biological children. The room tilted. Not physically, but something inside Cecilia shifted. Like the floor had moved an inch to the left, like the walls had expanded. Like the air had changed temperature. "What did you say?" "I said none of them are his, not one, not 2, all 3. The court-ordered paternity test is conclusive. Dominic Hartwell is not the biological father of any of those children." Cecilia pressed her free hand against the mattress. She felt the bedspread, the texture, cotton, hotel cotton, real, solid. She was still here, still in this room, still in this life, the life that kept pulling the ground from under her feet. "How is that possible?" Tad explained, slowly, carefully. "The way you explain something that changes everything." Naomi and Dominic had been doing IVF treatments for 3 years. The embryos were created at Whitfield Fertility Clinic. Dominic was told his sperm count was low but viable. The clinic attempted 3 rounds of implantation. All 3 times, Dominic's samples were flagged as non-viable. The clinic recommended donor material as a standard backup procedure. Naomi signed the consent form alone. She authorized the use of anonymous donor sperm. Dominic did not sign. Dominic was not told. The clinic records showed only Naomi's signature on the donor consent form. "She knew," Cecilia said. "Not a question," Tad confirmed. The clinic informed her after the second round that Dominic's samples could not produce viable embryos. They recommended a donor. She agreed. She did not tell Dominic. "Why?" Cecilia's voice cracked. "Why didn't she tell him?" "I found a journal entry from around that time. Naomi wrote it." He paused. Then he read it to her, his voice careful like a man handling glass. "The doctor told me Dominic's samples won't work. They recommended a donor. I said yes. I didn't tell Dominic because he would have refused. He would have said his pride matters more than our family. And I want these babies more than I want his approval. For the first time in my marriage, I made a choice that was mine. just mine. Cecilia let the words settle. She let them find their place inside the landscape of everything she now knew about her daughter's life, her daughter's marriage, her daughter's courage. Naomi did not have an affair. She made a medical decision, alone, in secret, because the man she married was too proud to accept help, too vain to admit his own body had failed, too selfish to put their family above his ego. And that same man was now fighting for custody of 3 children who were not biologically his. Fighting for control of a life insurance policy that was never rightfully his. Fighting to erase a woman who had built her family without him. What happens now? Dominic's legal position for sole custody is critically weakened. A man with no biological connection to the children, a documented pattern of financial fraud, and evidence of an extramarital affair has very little standing against a biological grandmother. And Sloane? Tad's voice shifted. There was something in it. Something that might have been satisfaction or might have been justice finally arriving after a long delay. That is where it gets interesting. When Sloane heard the DNA results, her first reaction was exactly what Dominic's lawyers feared. What do you mean? She thought Naomi was the one lying. She thought Naomi had the affair. She was the one cheating, Sloane said to Dominic, to his mother, to anyone who would listen. The babies aren't even his. For 48 hours, Sloane believed this was her victory. Proof that Naomi was the unfaithful one. Proof that Dominic had been the victim all along. She told the story to her friends, to her parents. She nearly posted about it online. Then Tad's office released the clinic records, the donor consent form, the medical documentation showing Dominic's non-viable samples, the timeline proving that Naomi had not had an affair. She had made a reproductive choice within the context of a legitimate medical procedure. The narrative flipped overnight, completely. Naomi had not betrayed Dominic. Naomi had built a family in spite of Dominic. She had carried 3 children for 8 months. She had endured a high-risk pregnancy. She had organized their nursery and painted their nameplates and drawn hearts on their ultrasound photos. And she had done all of it knowing that the man sleeping beside her every night was sleeping with someone else. Dominic was not destroyed by guilt. He was destroyed by humiliation, his manhood, his legacy, his name. None of it lived in those 3 babies. His mother called him that evening. Evangeline's voice on the phone was ice compressed into syllables. Those children are someone else's problem now. Do not drag this family's name any further through the mud. She hung up. She did not call back. The irony was not lost on anyone. Dominic had spent 3 years cheating on the only woman who was actually building their family. He had lied. He had stolen. He had forged. And the whole time Naomi was the one doing the work. The real work. The painful work. The shots and the appointments and the hope and the heartbreak. She did it alone. She did it in silence. And she did it knowing that her husband's contributions to their family had stopped at the bedroom door. Dr. Adrienne Whitmore called Cecilia that evening. Her voice was quiet, careful, the voice of a woman who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. Mrs. Rothwell, I need to tell you something. Your daughter spoke to me the week before delivery. She said something I haven't been able to forget. Cecilia waited. She pressed the phone against her ear. She said, "If something goes wrong, make sure my mother gets the babies." Not Dominic, my mother. I told her nothing would go wrong. I was wrong about that. But I remember what she asked, and I want you to know that I will say the same thing under oath if you need me to. Cecilia closed her eyes. She pressed the phone against her ear. She heard her daughter's voice, not the doctor's voice, Naomi's voice, clear and certain and brave, not Dominic. My mother, thank you, Cecilia whispered. She hung up. She sat in the hotel room in the falling dark. She did not turn on the light. She did not need to. She could see perfectly well. She could see everything now. Dominic went to the press, a local television reporter, Channel 7, a woman with helmet hair and a sympathetic nod who specialized in human interest stories, the kind that made people cry during dinner, that made them call their own mothers, that disappeared from memory within 24 hours unless something unusual happened, unless the story turned out to be something other than what it appeared. Dominic sat across from her in his living room, the living room that no longer had Naomi's photographs. He wore a button-down shirt, open collar, no tie, the look of a man inviting you in, the look of a man with nothing to hide. I loved my wife. The camera zoomed in on his eyes. They were wet, perfectly wet, the amount of moisture that suggests deep emotion without actual tears streaming down and ruining the shot. I thought we built a family together. I thought those children were mine. Finding out the truth has been the most devastating experience of my life. The reporter asked about the affair. Dominic deflected with practiced ease. I made mistakes. I won't deny that. But I never stopped loving Naomi. And I never stopped believing I was those babies' father. That was taken from me without my knowledge, without my consent. The segment aired on the 6 o'clock news, then the 10 o'clock news, then it went online. Within 48 hours, the comment section split in two. Half the people felt sorry for Dominic. The other half did not. Dominic had miscalculated. He had always been good at controlling small rooms, courtrooms, operating rooms, dinner tables. But the internet is not a small room. The internet is everyone, everywhere, all at once, and the internet had questions. If he loved his wife so much, why did his girlfriend move in 2 weeks after the funeral? If he didn't know about the donor sperm, why was he already filing for life insurance? Why did he forge his dead wife's signature? Tad waited 3 days. He let the story circulate. He let the comments accumulate. Then, with Cecilia's permission, he released a carefully curated selection of evidence. The forged life insurance signature. The forensic handwriting analysis showing it was not Naomi's hand. The financial transfers, $320,000 siphoned from the joint account into an LLC that purchased a condo in Sloane's name. The timeline showing the affair began before the IVF treatments, before the pregnancy, before any of it. And one text message, entered in the court record, available to any reporter who requested the public filing. Dominic to Sloane, 4 months before Naomi's death. Once the babies are born and everything settles, we will be free. She will sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. Public opinion reversed, not gradually, not thoughtfully. It reversed the way a wave crashes. Complete, sudden, drenching. Women shared the story on social media with captions that were part rage and part recognition. Comments from women who had been there, who had found the texts, who had discovered the second phone, who had been told they were paranoid, who had been told they were hormonal, who had been told they were crazy. Naomi became a symbol, not a victim, a symbol. The woman who protected her children from beyond the grave, the woman who built a legal case while building a nursery, the woman who fought her war in silence and won it after she was gone. Then Sloane called Tad. It was a Thursday evening. Tad was at his desk. His phone rang from an unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. He answered on the last ring. Mr. Huxley, this is Sloane Beaumont. I need to talk to you, and I think you need to hear what I have to say. She came to his office the next morning. She wore no lipstick. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like a woman who had not slept in a week. She looked like a woman who had finally stopped performing. She told Tad everything. Dominic had been texting another woman, not Naomi, not Sloane, a third woman, a pharmaceutical representative named Danielle. The texts were dated just 2 weeks after Naomi's death, while Sloane was moving into the guest house, while Sloane was rearranging furniture and posting baby shoes and believing she had won. "I found the texts on his phone," Sloane said, her voice flat, drained of the honey she usually poured over her vowels. "The same way Naomi found mine, history repeating itself. Except I'm not pregnant and I'm not dead." She provided Tad with recordings, conversations she had recorded on her own phone over the past 2 weeks. Dominic discussing how to handle Cecilia in the custody case. Dominic telling Sloane to lie about how long they had been together. Dominic explaining that he needed a woman in the picture for the custody hearing because single fathers don't get sympathy. She provided one more piece of information, something that made Tad set his pen down and lean back in his chair. "He told me to be the mother those kids need, not because he loves them, not because he wants to be a father. Because he needs me in the frame for the image, for the case. The same way he needed Naomi as a prop, as a backdrop, as a woman who made him look like the man he wanted people to see." Tad looked at her for a long time. "Why are you telling me this?" Sloane's eyes filled. She looked at the desk, at her hands, at the ring Dominic had bought her at the jewelry store the private investigator had photographed. She pulled it off her finger. She set it on the desk. "I'm not a good person in this story. I know that. I knew he was married. I told myself she didn't appreciate him. That's what liars tell themselves. But I didn't know about the insurance. I didn't know about the forged signature. I didn't know he was stealing from her while she was pregnant with children he convinced me were his." She paused. She looked up at Tad. "I thought he loved me. I was wrong about that too. Would you testify?" "Yes, under oath, in court, on camera, whatever you need." Cecilia learned about Sloane's defection from Tad that afternoon. She sat in her hotel room and listened. She said nothing for a long time. "I don't forgive her." Cecilia's voice was steady, clear. "I want to be clear about that. She slept with my daughter's husband. She moved into my daughter's home. She photographed my daughter's baby shoes. I don't forgive that. Understood. But if she can help protect those babies..." Cecilia continued, her words measured, chosen with the precision of a woman who had learned that justice requires calculation, that righteousness without strategy is just noise. "Then I will accept her testimony." Naomi would have accepted it too. Naomi was practical. She would have used every weapon available. That weekend, Cecilia took the triplets to the park. It was the first time she had taken them outside the house during her supervised visits. The triple stroller that Naomi had ordered arrived 6 days after the funeral. The shipping tag was still attached to the handle. Cecilia had never removed it. She left it there. A small paper tag with Naomi's name and address. A receipt from a purchase made by a woman who expected to push this stroller herself. She walked for 2 hours through the park, past the playground, around the pond, past the bench where she and Naomi used to sit and feed the ducks when Naomi was small, when the world was simple, when the biggest problem was remembering to bring bread that wasn't moldy. Theodore laughed. The book said babies could not laugh at 2 months old. "Too young," the book said, but Cecilia heard it. A small, bright, startled sound, like joy catching itself by surprise. She walked for 2 hours. She did not check her phone once. The final hearing was held on a Monday. Room 412 again. Same fluorescent lights, same stale coffee smell, same cold tile floor. But the room felt different. The air was charged, electric, the way air feels before a thunderstorm breaks. Cecilia wore the navy dress again, the one Naomi had picked out. She wore the brown purse with the monogram. Inside, folded along its creases, Naomi's letter. She touched it through the leather before she sat down. A ritual now. A talisman. Dominic arrived alone. No Whitfield. He had changed lawyers. His new attorney was younger, less expensive, less confident. He carried a briefcase that looked new. The leather stiff, not yet broken in by years of carrying the weight of other people's disasters. Evangeline was not in the courtroom. She had stopped returning Dominic's calls 2 weeks ago. After the news segment, after the public evidence release, after the Hartwell family name appeared in headlines beside words like fraud and forgery and affair, Tad presented the complete case, methodical, chronological, devastating. The financial fraud, the forged signature, the LLC, the condo, the siphoned inheritance. Each document entered into evidence with the precision of a surgeon who had spent 45 years learning where to cut, where to suture, where to let the wound bleed so everyone could see how deep it went. The DNA results, the clinic records, the donor consent form signed only by Naomi, the medical explanation, the journal entry explaining why she made the choice alone. Sloane's testimony. She took the stand. She spoke clearly. She did not cry. She described the affair, the timeline, the texts about being free, the recordings of Dominic planning how to handle Cecilia, the revelation about the third woman. He didn't love me. He didn't love Naomi. He doesn't love those babies. He loves what people think of him. He loves the story, the surgeon with the beautiful wife and the beautiful children and the beautiful house. We were all just characters in his story, and when the story didn't go the way he wanted, he rewrote it. Dominic's new lawyer attempted a cross-examination. It was brief, ineffective. The evidence was too comprehensive, the timeline too clear, the paper trail too long, Dr. Whitmore testified. She described Naomi's request. If something goes wrong, make sure my mother gets the babies. She described it simply. Without embellishment, the words were powerful enough on their own. Amy testified about Naomi's state of mind, the phone calls that became less frequent, the laughter that disappeared, the woman who stopped coming to book club, the friend she should have fought harder to reach. The Guardian ad litem presented her report. Linda Ashford, 52 years old. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, glasses on a chain around her neck. She had spent 4 weeks interviewing everyone involved, visiting both homes, observing the babies with Cecilia, observing the babies with Dominic. Her recommendation was clear. The children's best interests are served by placement with their maternal grandmother, Cecilia Rothwell. Mrs. Rothwell has demonstrated consistent, loving care. Mr. Hartwell has demonstrated a pattern of deception, financial misconduct, and priorities that do not center the children's welfare. The judge took 2 hours to deliberate. 2 hours during which Cecilia sat in the hallway on a wooden bench and stared at the wall and held her purse against her stomach and breathed. Fletch paced, back and forth, back and forth, his boots on the tile floor, a metronome of anxiety. Amy sat beside Cecilia. She held Cecilia's hand. She did not speak. She did not need to. 34 years of friendship with Naomi had taught Amy something about the women in this family. They did not need words. They needed presence. The bailiff called them back in. Everyone stood. The judge entered. She sat. She arranged her papers. She put on her reading glasses. In the matter of custody of Margot, Bridget, and Theodore Hartwell, this court finds as follows. Cecilia's heart hammered. She could feel it in her wrists, in her neck, in the soles of her feet against the courtroom floor. Full legal and physical custody is awarded to Cecilia Ann Rothwell. Cecilia closed her eyes. She did not gasp. She did not cry. She simply closed her eyes and let the words land. The court further orders that Dominic Hartwell repay all funds misappropriated from the joint accounts and the deceased's inheritance. The forged life insurance claim is referred to the district attorney's office for investigation of potential fraud. The judge looked up from her papers. She looked at Cecilia. Mrs. Rothwell, your daughter left behind a remarkable record, not just of evidence, of love. This court recognizes the extraordinary measures Naomi Rothwell Hartwell took to protect her children. This court is honored to fulfill her wishes. Cecilia opened her eyes. She looked at the judge. She nodded once. Thank you, Your Honor. Outside the courtroom, Tad handed Cecilia a second envelope. This one was different from the first, smaller, white, sealed with tape. Naomi's handwriting on the front. For Mom, after. She gave me this 3 weeks before delivery, with instructions to deliver it only after custody was resolved. She said you would need it then, not before. Cecilia held the envelope. She felt its weight. Light. Just a few pages, but the weight of it was immeasurable. She did not open it in the courthouse. She did not open it in the car. She drove to the cemetery. She sat on the bench near Naomi's headstone. The afternoon sun was warm, early spring, daffodils pushing through the soil near the fence. Naomi had loved daffodils. She said they were proof that things could survive the cold. Cecilia opened the envelope. Dear Mom, if you are reading this, 2 things happened. The babies are safe and you fought for them. I know I should have told you sooner. About Dominic. About the affair, about the money, about the IVF. I was ashamed, not of using a donor, of staying with a man who made me feel like using a donor was something to hide. These babies are mine. Every cell, every heartbeat, every kick at 3 in the morning. I chose them, I grew them, I talked to them every night. I told them about you, Mom. I told them you make the best apple pie in the world, that you cry at commercials, that you will love them fiercely and without condition, like you loved me. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of them growing up in Dominic's shadow. That's why I built this paper trail. That's why I talked to Tad. That's why I changed my will. You're going to be tired, Mom. 3 babies at 61, but I've seen you. I've seen what you're made of. You raised me and Fletch alone after Dad died. You worked 2 jobs and never missed a school play. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Tell them about me, not the sad parts. Tell them I loved gardening and bad reality TV and that I could never parallel park. Tell them I wanted them. Every single day, I wanted them. I love you, Mom. Now go be their grandmother, and their mother, and their whole world. You're Nomi. Cecilia folded the letter carefully along the existing creases. Her daughter had folded it into perfect thirds, the paralegal in her, precise to the end, even in love, even in goodbye. She put the letter in her purse. Next to the first letter, next to her wallet, next to the small notebook, she would carry it every day for the rest of her life. Not because she needed to remember, because it was the closest she could get to holding her daughter's hand. She stood. She washed her face at the cemetery's drinking fountain. She dried it with her sleeve. She looked at her reflection in the water. Brown eyes. Naomi's eyes. She walked back to Naomi's headstone. She stood there for a moment. The wind moved through the trees. A bird sang somewhere nearby, a cardinal, red against the gray branches. You saved them, Kali. From your grave, you saved your own children. She touched the top of the headstone, warm from the sun. She let her hand rest there. Then she walked to her car. Fletch was waiting. Amy was waiting. The triplets were in the car with a new nanny, a woman named Helen. 53 years old, recommended by Tad's wife. Warm hands, soft voice. Margot had fallen asleep on her shoulder within 5 minutes of meeting her. Cecilia got in the car. She buckled her seatbelt. She looked in the rearview mirror. 3 car seats, 3 babies, 3 faces. Margot was awake, eyes open, brown eyes, looking at Cecilia. Cecilia smiled, for the first time in months. A real smile, not brave. Not performed, real. She started the engine. She pulled out of the cemetery parking lot. The daffodils were blooming along the fence, yellow against green, stubborn and bright and absolutely alive. 6 months later, the house on Birchwood Lane looked different. Not dramatically, not in the way a renovation changes a space, in the way seasons change a garden, gradually, naturally. The same bones, the same structure. But new growth everywhere. Cecilia had repainted the master bedroom, soft yellow, Naomi's favorite color, the color of daffodils and lemon curd and the sunrise that came through the nursery window every morning at 6:15. She kept the furniture Naomi had chosen, the bed frame, the nightstands, the reading lamp, but the walls were new, fresh. the color of beginning again. She had put Naomi's photographs back, every single one. The hallway, the mantel, the side tables, the kitchen. She added new ones too. The triplets at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a timeline growing alongside them. Bridget's first smile. Margot's first tooth. Theodore reaching for a spoon with the determination of a man conquering mountains. Naomi's garden had come back to life. Cecilia watered it every evening. She did not know much about gardening. Naomi had been the one with the green thumb, but she learned. She read Naomi's gardening journal, another notebook filled with her daughter's careful handwriting. This one about soil composition and sunlight hours, and which tomatoes grew best in their zone. The rosemary survived the winter. Cecilia took this as a sign. Dr. Whitmore became a regular visitor. She came by every 2 weeks. She brought developmental milestone charts and homemade chicken soup. She checked the baby's reflexes and measured their growth and asked Cecilia questions about sleep schedules and feeding patterns. But she also stayed for coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and talked about things that had nothing to do with medicine. About the weather, about television shows, about a book she was reading, about her own mother, who had died 3 years ago and who she still missed every single day. They became friends, an unlikely pair, a 61-year-old grandmother and a 40-year-old obstetrician. Bound by a woman they had both failed to save, bound by a promise they were both keeping. Amy came every Sunday without fail. She arrived at 9 in the morning with bagels from the bakery on Highland Avenue, the same bakery where she and Naomi used to get coffee every Saturday. She brought cream cheese, 3 kinds, plain for Cecilia, everything for Fletch, strawberry because Naomi always ordered strawberry. After bagels, Amy read to the triplets, picture books, board books. She did different voices for every character. The bear voice was low and grumbly. The mouse voice was high and quick. The narrator's voice was calm and warm. Theodore laughed every time. The same bright, startled sound he had made in the park, like joy catching itself by surprise. Over and over, every Sunday. "Your mother would have done this better," Amy told the babies once. She was holding Bridget on her lap. Bridget was chewing the corner of a board book. She did the best bear voice. She could make it sound like the bear was actually in the room. "I can't do that, but I'm going to keep trying." Fletch built a treehouse in the backyard. It took him 3 weekends. He drove down from Portland each Friday night and worked from dawn to dusk. He used cedar planks and stainless steel bolts and a level that had belonged to his father. He painted it green, Naomi's second favorite color after yellow. The treehouse was not for the babies. They were 6 months old. They could barely hold up their own heads. The treehouse was for later, for when they were 5 and 7 and 10, for when they needed a place to climb and dream and whisper secrets, for when they needed to be above the ground, closer to the sky, closer to wherever their mother was. He put a small plaque on the door, hand-carved cedar. 2 words, the Nomi House. He showed it to Cecilia on a Sunday afternoon. She stood in the backyard and looked up at it, the green paint bright against the oak tree's branches, the plaque catching the sunlight. She would have loved it. She would have said the paint was uneven, Fletch replied. Cecilia laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from the belly, the kind she thought she might never produce again. But there it was, unexpected and warm and proof that joy survives even the deepest grief. In the evenings, after the babies were asleep and the house was quiet, Cecilia sat in the nursery. She had moved the rocking chair to the center of the room, between the 3 cribs, so she could reach all of them. Margot on the left, Bridget in the middle, Theodore on the right. The rocking chair was the one Naomi had bought at a yard sale. She had refinished it herself, sanded the old paint, applied 3 coats of white stain, sealed it with polyurethane. It still smelled faintly of lemon oil, the lemon oil Naomi used for all her furniture projects. $1.50 a bottle from the hardware store. Cecilia rocked. The chair creaked softly. A rhythm, a pulse, the sound of something old and reliable doing what it was made to do. She looked at the 3 cribs, 3 mobiles spinning slowly overhead, stars and moons and clouds. 3 nightlights plugged into the walls, shaped like stars. Casting soft yellow light across the ceiling. Naomi had ordered them online. They arrived 2 days after the funeral. Cecilia plugged them in herself. Margot slept on her stomach, always. Despite every recommendation to the contrary, she would flip herself over within minutes of being placed on her back. Stubborn, determined. Cecilia recognized the trait immediately. It was Naomi's, pure Naomi. Bridget slept on her back, perfectly still, arms at her sides like a small soldier at rest. Her eyes moved behind her lids. Dreaming already at 6 months old, Cecilia wondered what babies dreamed about. Warmth, probably. Milk. The sound of a heartbeat. Theodore slept on his side, curled, his fist pressed against his mouth. He was the quietest of the 3, the most patient. He waited for his bottle. He waited for his turn to be held. He waited for Margot to stop babbling and Bridget to stop fussing. And then he made his small sound. Not a cry, not a demand, a notification. I am here. I am ready whenever you can. Cecilia rocked and watched them breathe. 3 small chests rising and falling, 3 small lives, each one a miracle of science and stubbornness and a woman's refusal to accept that she could not have the family she wanted. People would tell this story as a tragedy. She knew that. A young mother who died, a cheating husband, a courtroom fight, a scandal, an obituary too short for a life too brief. But that was not the story. The story was a woman who loved her children so much that she built them a life raft before the ship even sank, who gathered evidence and organized files and changed her will and wrote letters and made plans, who prepared for the worst while painting nameplates and folding baby blankets and singing lullabies to a belly that held 3 beating hearts. The story was a mother who fought her last battle in silence and won it from beyond the grave. Cecilia stood from the rocking chair. She moved to the window. The backyard was dark. The treehouse was a shadow against the oak tree. The garden was sleeping. The porch light cast a small circle of gold on the steps. She picked up the purple marker from the windowsill. She had found it in Naomi's desk drawer. The same marker Naomi used to draw hearts on the ultrasound photo. The same shade of purple. Dark, rich, the color of intention. Cecilia uncapped the marker. She drew a small heart on the wall beside Margot's crib, then another beside Bridget's, then another beside Theodore's. 3 hearts, small, imperfect. A grandmother's hand was not as steady as a mother's. But they were there, permanent, purple against soft yellow walls. She capped the marker. She put it back on the windowsill. She would leave it there for later, for when the babies were old enough to hold it themselves, for when they were old enough to draw their own hearts. She looked at the clock, 11:45, almost midnight, almost a new day. She should sleep, she should rest. She had 3 6-month-olds who would wake her at 5:30 demanding bottles and attention and the full force of her love. She would give it to them, all of it, every morning, every night, every bottle, every diaper, every bath, every lullaby, every scraped knee and first step and bad dream. She would give them everything. Because that was what Naomi had asked, and because that was what Cecilia did, what she had always done, what she would always do. She began to hum softly, the lullaby she had sung to Naomi, the one her own mother had sung to her, the one Naomi had sung to her belly for 9 months. A melody passed down through 3 generations of women. No words, just sound, just the hum of love moving through time. The babies slept, the night lights glowed, the house was quiet. Outside, the first stars appeared above the treehouse with its cedar plaque and its green paint and its promise of climbing and dreaming and laughter. that had not happened yet but would. Someday. Soon or later. She had 3 of everything now. 3 mouths to feed, 3 futures to build, 3 hearts that beat because Naomi's had stopped. And Cecilia Rothwell, 61 years old, exhausted and silver-haired and fiercely, completely, stubbornly alive. She would not trade a single one. Not for anything in this world, not for anything in the next.